My name is Alex, and I'm a 29-year-old artist living in a bustling neighborhood in Chicago. I've always believed that life is a canvas, and we are the artists painting our own destinies. But as I've come to learn, sometimes the most beautiful paintings are created from the deepest mistakes. Let me tell you a story about a woman who had to learn this the hard way. Once, there was a woman named Sarah, a charming, elegant woman in her early 30s. For over a decade, she had been in a devoted relationship with her fiancé, Kevin. They had just gotten engaged, and their wedding was just around the corner. To the outside world, their love seemed unbreakable, a perfect bond built on mutual respect and affection. Kevin was everything a woman could hope for: kind-hearted, encouraging, and deeply committed. He earned a modest living but worked tirelessly, often putting in extra hours to ensure their lives were comfortable. He genuinely believed that with love and a bit of sacrifice, they could build a beautiful and lasting life together. However, a quiet dissatisfaction began to grow within Sarah. She couldn't help but notice the stark difference between her life and the lives of her friends. Many of the women in her social circle were living in luxury. They owned lavish homes, wore designer clothes, dined at upscale restaurants, and traveled to exotic destinations. Whether it was through their own successful careers or their wealthy partners, they had access to a world Sarah could only dream of. The contrast between their reality and her own modest life made her increasingly uneasy. Every time she saw their expensive bags or scrolled through pictures of their lavish vacations, a void seemed to open up inside her. A small part of her started to question if love alone was truly enough. Even though she adored Kevin, she couldn't shake the feeling of being ashamed of their simple lifestyle. The stress of planning the wedding only intensified these feelings, and Sarah began to emotionally withdraw. She found herself caught between the security of Kevin's love and a deep longing for a more luxurious life that he couldn't provide. Then a new person came into her life quite unexpectedly. One afternoon, while looking at social media, Sarah received a friend request from a man named Mark. She knew of him from her social circles. He was a wealthy businessman with a reputation for his lavish tastes and a history of infidelity. Initially, Sarah was wary, but her curiosity got the better of her, and she accepted the request, telling herself it was harmless. What began as a simple conversation quickly turned into something more. Mark was charming and seemed to know exactly what Sarah desired. He showered her with expensive gifts, took her to fancy restaurants, and lavished her with compliments and attention. With him, Sarah felt seen and pampered. It was a thrilling feeling. The attention, the luxury, the fantasy of a life far from her own. Slowly, almost without realizing it, she started spending more time with Mark. Her time with him became a thrilling escape from her ordinary life. Kevin, for all his goodness, couldn't compete with the glamour Mark brought into her world. But Sarah was playing a dangerous game, and she knew it. Her wedding was fast approaching, and she was living a double life. One filled with the promise of love and the other driven by temptation and secrecy. She kept telling herself that she had everything under control, and that no one would ever find out. But that illusion came crashing down just days before the wedding. Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The news left her in a state of shock. She should have been happy. After all, she and Kevin were planning to start a family together. Instead, a wave of panic washed over her. She couldn't be sure who the father was. The timing of the pregnancy blurred the lines between her two relationships, and the uncertainty was overwhelming. She felt completely trapped by the weight of her choices. The guilt of standing beside Kevin at the altar with such a massive secret was unbearable. What if the baby wasn't his? What would happen if the truth ever came out? Fear took over. Fear of losing Kevin, of public humiliation, and of destroying the life she had with him by confessing. Sarah was completely lost. The only thing she was certain of was that she had made a terrible mistake. That could cost her everything. Overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, she made a heartbreaking decision to terminate the pregnancy. In her mind, it was the only way forward. She told herself it was a necessary sacrifice to protect her future, her marriage, and Kevin's trust. When it was all over, she felt a strange combination of relief and profound grief. With a trembling determination, she vowed to turn over a new leaf, to be completely faithful from that day forward. She still loved Kevin deeply and truly believed they could build a happy life together. When their wedding day finally arrived, it was everything they had hoped for. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with laughter, joy, and the loving presence of their friends and family. To everyone watching, they seemed like a couple destined for a long and happy marriage. Sarah held on tightly to that illusion, doing her best to bury her past and focus on the life she was building with Kevin. She was determined to be the partner he deserved. Months later, they started trying to have a baby. Each month brought hope, followed by disappointment. At first, Sarah thought it was just a matter of time. But as the months turned into a year, her concern grew. Doctor after doctor gave her vague answers, which eventually led to a quiet but grim reality. Her chances of conceiving a child were low. As the truth sank in, a dark suspicion began to gnaw at her. Had the abortion damaged her ability to become a mother? That thought refused to leave her. It haunted her waking hours and invaded her sleep. Guilt consumed her, whispering cruel reminders of what she had lost. She found herself thinking bitterly, if I had kept that baby, I would at least have a child now, no matter whose it was. The future she had once imagined with Kevin now felt impossibly far away. Her sadness deepened, bleeding into every part of her life. Kevin noticed the change in her. He tried to comfort her, gently suggesting they could explore other options like adoption or fertility treatments. But Sarah's grief turned inward, becoming a mix of anger and regret. She began to shut down emotionally, distant and plagued by the choices she had buried. Then one day, everything started to fall apart. Kevin overheard something, just a small piece of a conversation, but it was enough to raise his suspicions. The name Mark, spoken too casually with too much familiarity. He couldn't ignore the feeling in his gut. When he asked her about it, pressing gently at first and then with growing urgency, Sarah couldn't hold back any longer. The truth came pouring out. The affair, the pregnancy, the abortion. Kevin was shattered. The woman he had given everything to, the woman he had trusted with his heart, had deceived him in the most painful way imaginable. She tried to explain. She begged for his forgiveness and pleaded for another chance. But something inside Kevin had broken. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't look at her the same way. The betrayal was too big. The future they had planned, the children they had dreamed of, all felt like a cruel illusion now. He stayed for a while, trying to find a way to move past it. But the hurt only grew heavier. Eventually, he made the difficult decision to leave. Staying meant living with a pain he couldn't bear. And so their marriage came to an end, not with a fight, but with a quiet silence filled with sorrow and finality. Sarah was left behind alone with her memories and regrets. The ambitions that once seemed so important to her, status, comfort, admiration, now felt empty and meaningless. She had traded away the one thing that truly mattered, love. The one man who had ever truly cherished her was gone, and with him the life they could have built. Now, in the quiet corners of her days, she often thought about the life that might have been, the laughter of children, the warmth of shared mornings, the simple joys of growing old together. She had sacrificed all of it for a fleeting thrill, a false promise of something more. And in the end, she was left with nothing but silence and the echo of her own choices. There was no one else to blame. She had chased a dream that was never meant to be hers, and in doing so, lost the love, the trust, and the family she had once held in her hands.